George always said, I didn't go 15 with Ali. Ali went
15 with me.
They phoned my dad and said, would you like to take on Ali in 17 days?
Today's guest is Mitch Chuvalo, son of Canadian boxing legend George Chuvalo.
Retired educator and storyteller, known for preserving his father's legacy, confronting family tragedy with honesty, and sharing the untold stories that shaped Canadian boxing history.
So he phoned my mom and said, hey, Lenny, what are we doing in 17 days? She goes, I don't know what we're doing. Like, make plans. I'm fighting for the championship of the world at Maple Leaf Gardens, right? So
There was some tragedy that happened.
when people are in pain, they'll do almost anything to escape. My brother Jesse shot himself at 25. 8 years later, my brother Georgie gets out of jail, overdoses on purpose. Tragic things happen. My mother, in her depression, took her life with a whole bunch of sleeping pills. That 3 years after that, my brother Stephen, coming out of jail, overdosed on heroin.
And we seen Tyson just up to, he does a talk show and he invited us. We brought George. He gave us the tickets to come. And he stopped the show just to say George was here. People stood up, clapping, went crazy. No other man at that time took Ali 15 rounds. So let's start with you, Mitch. You're a retired school teacher?
I am. I taught for 37 years at various schools in the Greater Toronto area and in other places, yeah.
What schools can you say?
Oh, yeah, I started out in a little school in Acton. Remember Acton,
Yep.
Ontario, made famous by the old Hyde House. That was one place of distinction people knew Acton by. Then in Toronto, I taught at a little bit of York Memorial and George Harvey Collegiate, and then Western Tech, and then I finished at the University of Toronto Schools.
Nice. And you retired when?
I retired 15 months ago.
And you also taught wrestling?
I was coached wrestling, men's and women's, rugby. I'm trying to remember everything. Football, of course. I enjoyed coaching football. I did a little track and field. Had to do a little basketball one time, which you get exposure to coaching those things or teaching those things during class. But sometimes you're a last minute basketball teacher.
Yeah, that's right.
And they play great basketball in Toronto. So
You had a scholarship for football?
So I was a pretty good football player when I was in high school. I got 6 scholarship offers, and one of them was to Florida State. I was very flattered to get an offer to go there, and went there in the fall of 1977. Nice. But returned home in the spring, hurt my knee in the weight room, and then I was forced to play on it against my will, and got into a bit of an altercation with some of the coaching staff, and decided it was in my best interest to leave. Came back, played one semester at the University of Guelph under Dick Brown, a coach I really enjoyed and loved. But I was told by the athletic director that Dick was going to lose his job to another coach, and I loved Dick a lot. And I had received a phone call from one of the coaches who was at Florida State, who went to a smaller school in Alabama, Troy State, and asked me if I'd be interested in going there, which I did. Stayed half a year there through spring football, but injured my other knee, and then they wouldn't pay for my tuition in the fall. So I decided to come back and play at Guelph, and I finished my career there. Had a couple of okay football years, but great relationships. So I had to give you the whole history of my sporting history. Oh my! You should have intervened, Tommy. Don't get me on a roll.
Then you got into a little security. You started bouncing.
Oh no!
Actually, with somebody I've had on the podcast, David Malhedo. Who you worked with?
Yeah, my comrade at BJ Cuddles. Yeah, back in the Manulife Center in the 1970s and 80s. Yes. No, I've had. It's interesting. I've had much in the way of security experience. Most importantly, I think the stuff I got with my dad when my dad would put on a fight show in Toronto. I would be responsible for the door, making sure nobody snuck in the back door. So yeah, I and then I worked at various bars in the city of Toronto to make money during the summer times or on holiday, because I needed money to go to school, right? So I had to have that line of income. And I enjoyed my time in security. We called it bouncing back then, Tommy. Now you guys are civilized to call it security. But yeah, I enjoyed that because you got to see another side of Toronto. And then you also had to work on your relationship building skills and your PR skills because, as you know, you meet people in crisis, right? So you have to problem solve, you have to de-escalate, you have to do all those fantastic things, which are, can I make such a broad, sweeping political statement? I think we need more of that in society today. People just lowering the temperature and learning how to de-escalate things because the climate we're living in is pretty hot and bothered. And anyway, but getting back to the security thing, yeah, just learning how to, people are in some state of crisis when they're, you're kicking them out.
Drinking
and they're drinking, of course, yeah. And then they're excited and maybe something happened or there was a fight or an altercation or they got too inebriated or whatever. And now it's, you have to handle their emotion too, right? So we live in an emotional world. So being in those environments where you get to like cool people down and learn a little bit about human nature if we ever can, it's also good for your sports skills because things come at you from different angles.
That's right.
Hi, Tom. You always got to be aware.
Okay, so now let's get into your dad. Who people that don't know who his dad is George Chuvalo, boxing legend, fought Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, George Foreman, Patterson, Elvis, Corey, 93 pro fights, which is not done these days.
No,
some
thankfully.
guys, some guys 20 fights maybe or 30 the most. His dad, George, 93 pro fights, 64 knockouts. Never knocked down, never knocked out.
Well, hold on. Does that include my mom? Of course, she used a couple of implements. Anyway, George says he only took a knee. He said the cast iron bounced off, and he only took a knee.
He was, as an amateur, he was unbeaten in 18.
Oh, no. My father was 16-1 as an amateur.
Okay.
So
I was corrected.
Because there is an individual I saw one time. I was doing some research and I've got to find the article again. My father lost to an older, more experienced fighter in St. Catharines, Ontario. Right. Shout out to my good buddies in St. Catharines. Yeah, he lost to somebody there, and I want to find the name because it'd be interesting to see if that person has any relatives who can perhaps recount this individual telling people, "Yeah, I beat George Chuvalo." Those are the kinds of stories I like.
Still,
about
never knocked down as an amateur.
No, George.
That goes right to the end of his career.
No, George was never knocked down in the ring, and that's probably what he, as you and I have noticed in watching the socials. People, when they give top 10 lists of anything in boxing, my dad's always up there when it comes to like the best chin in boxing. Being
the last one I read, there was a few. Tyson Fury, and there was two others I read. They did a thing and they said he was number one. Yeah. George Chuvalo was the best chin in boxing.
Ricky Hatton.
Who just passed away.
Passed away, unfortunately.
That's who I met. Yeah, there was somebody else too. Just can't remember.
Yeah, just so the fact that my father is even in those kinds of conversations when people talk about those positive attributes of his character and how tough he was, I'm very proud of that.
Then he turned pro in 1956 as a heavyoweight. He fought 4 guys in one night at Maple Leaf Gardens for the Jack Dempsey tournament. Yeah, knocked them all out. Won that.
Yeah, knocked 4 people out in an evening, and the reason why my father turned professional after his being a national champion as an amateur. He beat a guy called Peter Piper in Edmonton.
Yes.
In weight 56 or something like that. And who we met later on in life and was a great guy, by the way. So it's nice to see adversaries could be friends after. When my dad, after he knocked him out, my dad, came from working class people, and in the construct of his perfect world, having a lot of money was something that was enticing to him. And one of the fastest ways immigrant kids or kids of immigrant stock back in the old days used to try to climb the economic ladder in sport was through boxing. you're a 1,000,000 to 1 shot, but if you make it, boxing is almost an all or nothing thing. You either make it to the top, become champion, and have your opportunity to garner as much money as you can being champion, or you get nothing. Right? If you fall short, then you get nothing. So it's an all or nothing sport. So I think that kind of appealed to my father too, right?
And yeah, like I said, that was for the Jack Dempsey tournament.
Sorry, and did Jack Dempsey, who the Manasseh Mauler refereed all the boxing matches the night my dad fought the 4 guys in one evening. Right.
Then he became the heavyweight champion in 1958, which he held for over 20 years.
On and off.
Yeah.
So my dad lost twice, very controversially, to a very tough Robert Cleroux from Montreal, and they fought 3 fights. Cleroux won 2 split decisions, the first and the third fight, and my father convincingly won the second. From most reports, people say the first fight was an obvious hometown decision for Cleroux. I don't want to talk about Quebec politics, but, my dad was considered to be the big, fighter from English Canada. And the last thing my dad was an English Canadian. So for Quebec to get a victory over them was very symbolic, right? When Quebec was starting to talk about independence, I think that had something to do with the hometown decision, but that's just me, and I'm biased. So, and then George beats him convincingly the second time, and apparently the last fight was either guy could have won it. And my dad, often said, why did Robert Cleroux, another Canadian, beat you twice, 2 out of 3? And my father says he never begrudged him that because he was a very tough guy and underrated in a lot of ways. But then my dad won the title again. Then my dad was fighting internationally, Tommy, through most of the 60s. And he didn't pay much attention to the national title until the Canadian Boxing Federation told him he had to fight or else they were going to strip it from him.
But he couldn't get it. A lot of people didn't want to fight him.
Well, of course, yeah. There were not a lot of people to do, and then was it economically viable too, right?
And then we had Henry Cooper, who was the
British. He was called the British Empire champion back then. It's now called the Commonwealth Championship.
And there's a story with him.
Well, he didn't want to fight my dad for obvious reasons. I don't think his style matched up very well with my father's style. But take nothing away from Henry.
Yeah, he's tough. Just died a year ago, but not even maybe.
Yeah, he had a
few months ago.
Great left hook, and he had that fantastic Cockney accent that everybody in England, just
what was
Henry.
What was that story his manager said?
Oh, so my dad was in England
at an event.
He was actually. I remember he told me this. Funny you should ask about this question, about this incident. My father said back so many boxing clubs in England he remembers as being above pubs. Like there was a pub immediately underneath. And he said there were 2 or 3 that he trained in, and he thought that was kind of interesting. Anyway, my dad's training in one of these aforementioned pubs, and in walks Jim Wicks, who looks kind of like Alfred Hitchcock, like bowler and like a little umbrella or cane or something, walking along with a long trench coat on. My dad says, my dad recognizes him, Mr. Wicks, when is Mr. Cooper, when are Mr. Cooper and I going to meet in the ring? And Mr. Jim Wicks turns to my dad and says, Mr. Chuvalo, Henry doesn't even want to meet you socially. Never mind.
He didn't want to fight him
in the ring. Yeah, but what that also speaks to is the role of a manager. Like the manager, it's hard to see a really successful boxer who did not have some form of good management. It's rife with so much mismanagement. But to have good management too and how does that happen in boxing? That's just like that's just the roll of the dice. Yeah.
Then he gets the call to fight Muhammad Ali in 1966 on 17 days' notice because he wasn't supposed to be him. It was supposed to be, was it Ellis?
No, it was supposed to be Ernie Terrell
in Montreal.
Yeah. So that story is Muhammad Ali declares he doesn't want to fight in Vietnam, that he's a member of the Nation of Islam. And the U.S., the majority of the U.S. Sporting press turned on him And he was having trouble getting any kind of fights, even though they hadn't taken away his boxing license yet, but they had threatened to do it. He was having trouble getting fights anywhere in the United States because anywhere they would go, the local boxing commission would say he had made unpatriotic remarks by not wanting to join the army, and they weren't willing to put on a fight to benefit the economics of this draft dodger. So they started looking for fights internationally. They'd been to England before. We'd mentioned that Ali had fought Cooper, Tom, and I'm trying to remember the mechanics of this. I think the World's Fair was going to happen in Montreal in 1967. So for whatever reason, Bob Arum suggested that they go to Montreal to do it. Some kind of connected somehow.
The two, somehow.
Yeah. Although they would be months apart. And Mayor Drapeau, the mayor of Montreal, was initially okay with that idea. But when the American Legion in the United States saying, we're going to boycott Expo 67, we're going to tell Americans not to come if you put on the fight up there between Terrell and Ali, we're putting pressure on you. Don't do it. So Drapeau caved, and they couldn't get a fight. And then Bob Arum called the infamous Harold Ballard in Toronto.
Whoever doesn't know Bob Arum, he's a well-known promoter in boxing.
Yeah.
And so go ahead.
Yeah, he's worth something like $333 million.
Yeah.
The promoters do okay in boxing. Don King included. Yeah, they do all right. Where were we in the story? We were talking about
bringing it to Toronto now with Harold Ballard.
Thank you. So they call Harold Ballard,
who owned the Leafs and Maple Leaf Gardens.
Yeah, a lot of people connecting with the demise of the organization forever. They phoned him up and said, "Would you be willing to put on a fight in Toronto?" And Harold Hal said yes. And what they then did was think of an obvious opponent, and it would have been my father, who had fought for the championship the year before against Ernie Terrell and lost in a controversial decision. He said, "Will George fight?" It was 17 days notice. So they said, "Well, let's find out." They phoned my dad and said, "Would you like to take on Ali in 17 days?" And my dad said, he said, "Hold on, I got to ask my wife." So he phoned my mom and said, "Hey, Lenny, what are we doing in 17 days?" She goes, my mother at the time had like 4 children. She goes, "I don't know what we're doing. Like, what do you ask?" He goes, "Well, I'm make plans. I'm fighting for the championship of the world at Maple Leaf Gardens, right?" So, yeah, that's and then Georgie pulled it off that night, and I remember going to that fight.
I was going to ask you that. You were at that fight.
I was at
How old were you?
6.
That tells your age right now.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. I have the pleasure of getting to be an old man.
And he went 15 rounds with him, and he was the first ever to take Ali 15. No other man at that time took Ali 15 rounds.
Yeah, well, George always said, "I didn't go 15 with Ali. Ali went
15 with me." And actually put Canada on the boxing map at that time.
Well, you have to remember why that happened the year before, or was it months before? I don't think it was a whole year. Maybe not. I'm trying to remember when Muhammad stopped Sonny Liston in the first round, and many people thought of that fight that it was fixed, that Liston took a dive, that there was mob involvement. So boxing, especially at the heavyweight division, had a
mob influence.
Yeah, and it had a slimy feel to it at that time. So after the fight, a lot of people spoke to how the fight was just a great, show of display of courage on both fighters' parts. And my dad said, he always said, do you think Muhammad is a tough guy? And my dad said, this is before the first fight. He said, he has to be tough. He's standing up to a lot of powerful people. So that tells you about his mental strength, right? So I think that's, my father recognized that pretty early and articulated it too. So that tells you about how he respected Muhammad too.
And then Ali actually said after the fight, it was probably one of the toughest guys he's fought so far.
Well, yeah. So when you think of George's place in, the lexicon of, those who fought Ali and all the literature that's been written about, Muhammad's career, and you think of George and where's his place there. I think when Muhammad was at his, I think you'll agree, Tom, when he was at his physical peak was up to the time until they took his license away from him, right? So, which was just a few fights after he fought my dad. So up until that time, he was starting to peak physically. And I think it's recognized that during that time of Muhammad's physical peak, my father gave him, up till that time, the toughest battle he'd ever had. But went 15 rounds. But and Muhammad he was so fast and so intelligent too. Anyway, Muhammad was at his physical peak, and my dad took him 15 rounds. Now, after that, what we had seen with Ali and Liston, that fight was like, I think that really highlighted that fight as to what a good heavyweight boxing match should look like. So it's kind of stands in that relief for me when I think about it, and I think a lot of other people in boxing think about it that way too.
Now Maple Leaf Gardens is closed down. It's a Loblaws store. Plus, the upstairs is owned by, I think, Ryerson or somebody. They have a skating arena, gym. The Mattamy Center, and they have a gym. They still hold some events there.
Can I tell you a very interesting?
But if you go, the outside on the wall of Maple Leaf Gardens has a plaque, and it tells you about things that's happened there, like the Beatles playing, Trudeau appearing there for something. It has the George Chuvalo Ali fight on that plaque. It's right outside on the wall. Then inside the Loblaw stores, you could find old photos of the Maple Leafs, other teams, Stanley Cup pictures, and they have on one of the posts in one of the aisles when you're shopping, a picture of Ali and Chuvalo, their fight. It says 1966 on it. And there was one day
Can I tell you? So what you've described, absolutely perfect. There is one issue with it, though.
What's that?
The picture that they put up there
is from Vancouver.
It's from the Vancouver fight in 1972.
That's the one on the wall, but the one in the store on the post is from the
Is it for the first one?
Yeah.
Okay.
But they do have the one. Yeah, that's true.
One is
one is
misrecognized.
Wrong fight.
It's the wrong fight.
Yeah.
So sorry, Tommy. I stopped you.
No. And one day I was downtown with George, and he goes, "Let's go into the gardens." A couple of years ago, let's go in the gardens and take a look around. So with me and him went in. We went in the Loblaw store, and it just happened that they were having some guys from head office there, and one of the managers at the store walks by and stops and looks at me. He goes, "George Chuvalo?" I go, "Yes." Wait a minute. He runs in the back, comes out with like 3 or 4 guys from Loblaw's head office, take photos with George, signs autographs. I run out to the car because George, go get them some pictures, because we always had pictures in the car. I run out, bring in pictures. George signs it for everybody. Took photos, like I said. Yeah, great day.
Tommy, you and George have had a special relationship. You and my dad had a special relationship. My dad started having cognitive issues, and Tommy stepped in as a great friend and man Friday and all around good dude, and he's been a fantastic friend to my dad. But I always used to get kicks out of Tommy repeatedly, because he would tell me all these humorous stories about on being on the road with Georgie,
which we'll get into some stuff in a little while.
but you saw my dad at a very vulnerable time in his life, Tom, and I'm sure you got some great stories to. I hope you're writing the stories down, and I hope hope they see the light of day in a big forum sometime.
Then he fought Ali again in 72 in Vancouver, went the distance 12 rounds.
Yeah. That was, there's a beautiful story written about that fight. I think it's the best piece of writing ever. My dad's had lots of things written about him and a lot of literature out there about him. But the best thing ever written about him, well, one of the two that I really enjoy, it was called Pain and Violence as a Way of Life, by a fantastic boxing writer called Leonard Gardner. Leonard Gardner also wrote the screenplay for a very famous boxing movie called Fat City, starring Stacy Keach and a young Jeff Bridges. Anyway, the story describes the buildup in the second Ali fight and what transpired in the fight and what happened after. And I think it is the most honest and authentic piece of writing about my father. So if anybody, it's available on Deadspin. And if you ever want to get a great sense of who my father was at the end of his career, that's, you know, I'm lucky that people have written like beautiful stuff like that I can access and always have a deep connection with it. They thought that much about my dad to write like that about him. So I'm lucky. Right?
And then there's some funny videos out there of him and Ali going at each other with comedic names and different, you know, there's one, George is training and Ali comes to the gym and starts touching his muscles. And George made fun of Ali saying he was like Popeye or.
Yeah. Because he said that when Muhammad was younger, he developed into a real physical specimen in his mid to late 20s. When he was younger, he was still a young kind of angular, right. That type of body type hadn't developed the muscle that it would soon develop, right? So when my dad met him at a press conference somewhere, he called him Popeye. He goes, Popeye, why you call me Popeye? Well, if you remember the cartoon character Popeye
forearms,
huge forearms, skinny
muscle. Yeah.
So my father said to Muhammad, he said, you must have, back then he called himself Cassius. This is before the Muhammad Ali days. He said, Cassius, you must have big forearms. He goes, why? Well, you say that? And he goes, because you sure got skinny biceps. So that's the repartee back and forth.
And he called George a washerwoman.
Called him the washerwoman because my father fought a guy in Louisville and hit him over the ropes, and it looked like he was doing the old scrubbing on washing boards. So that was supposed to be some form of, you know, misogynistic pejorative, calling someone a woman and a washerwoman, you know, back.
But it was all in fun.
Oh yeah.
Because, and then there was Muhammad was doing a press conference where George came out dressed as a woman, hit him with a purse. Muhammad jumps up and they pretend like they're going to fight. But that was all a build up.
Can we talk about the economics of boxing here? Like, you have to remember when Muhammad became champ or was about to become champ, you know, one of the people he would have wanted to have fought is my father, because, you know, the politics of boxing are, you know, a white heavyweight, a black heavyweight fighting is a huge draw. So it's a huge draw in boxing. The race still plays a part and a role in boxing, and less so now, I think, thankfully, but it's still an issue. And to have a white fighter, Muhammad could have made a huge amount of money. Now, which he went on to make millions and millions. But back then, I mean, my father being one of the white contenders, you could draw a huge, big gate, right? So there was always a little back and forth between them, try to build the gate a little bit, you know?
So, yeah. What did your dad make when he fought Ali? What did Ali make?
Which fight?
The first one, Maple Leaf Gardens. We'll just say
I
that.
don't know.
What did your dad make?
I think 27,000. Yeah.
That was after he paid off.
No, that was before he got taxed on it and paid his manager and trainer. Yeah.
And I think,
and the second Ali fight was his biggest purse. I think he made something like somewhere around 70,000. I'm not sure. I've heard somewhere around.
I heard Ali made just over $100,000 or something as a heavyweight champion.
120 or something like that. Yeah.
He boxing wasn't like it is now, where you sign for $50 million, then you're getting all the sponsorships and.
But it's two schools of thought on that, right? Number one is, you know, guys don't fight as often, so boxing's not an exciting sport. I have a hard time watching modern boxing because I know what happens. I know what happens to fighters as they get older. But back then, guys would fight. You know, my dad 93 fights because in a career, you have to, you're not making big dough. You got to keep fighting, right? So now the guys make a huge amount of money, and I don't begrudge them that, and I don't think we have to talk about it like it's affecting the quality of boxing. If you get out of, I'm very happy that there are some fighters who get out of the game, and after a short and lucrative career, I hate to see a fighter go back and fight past their prime trying to catch the magic again, because they never do, and that's when they get really severely hurt, right? So, well we're just traveling all over the place, Tommy. Sorry, man.
I was going to say something about that. Oh, Bob Arum. He when he promoted that fight at Maple Leaf Gardens, that was his first fight to ever promote, because he was a lawyer at the time, and he did it on his credit card.
Yeah. Well,
And now look at him.
yeah. No, I think he's worth about $333 million.
Yeah. And still
All
in his 90s now and still promoting some of the best fights.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't like. I guess he gets some satisfaction in pulling it off. But the guy's like, when I see all the fighters that are destitute and they have nothing and they sold their soul, like, for a little bit of glory and money, and I see these promoters and people just made huge bucks on the game, and that there isn't some kind of pool where people could just draw from to get like basic medical care or something like that. That's my father way back in the 1950s when he was early on as champion, had a chance to talk to Tommy Douglas. And Tommy wasn't your namesake, was the leader of the CCF and the New Democratic, which developed the strong union people. My grandfather always voted for them. He wanted my dad to start a boxers union, and that never came about. But that's the kind of different mindset back then. Now it's ruthless, like just for yourself, right? And I don't blame people for that. That's the way we're raised. Yeah.
Now let's get into your home life. 4 boys, 1 girl.
Yeah, my family. Yeah.
Yeah. There was some tragedy that happened.
Well, so anybody who knows a little bit of my life probably knows that I've had a series of what can only be described as tragic things happen, right? So, but I'm not unlike a lot of people. Tragedy happens to everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had my brother Jesse shot himself at 25. He was a heroin addict at the time. 8 years later, my brother Georgie gets out of jail and overdoses on purpose. He stated very publicly and openly that he wanted to die. He took his own life. 4 days later, my mother, in her depression, took her life with a whole bunch of sleeping pills that she discovered that my brothers had somewhere in the house, and she found them for a night just like that, and she took her own life. And then 3 years after that, my brother Stephen, coming out of jail, overdosed on heroin in my sister's, Vanessa's apartment. So, yes, but that's traumatic. But it also, when you live it through it, you hope that you can glean a few lessons from it, right? So, it's a double-edged sword, Tom. Sometimes it's the worst thing that ever happened, and sometimes I can say, no, there could be worse.
But it started with your first brother. I think he was in a motorcycle accident or something.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you're thinking about what causes anything, you can always go. I always think about it. We were talking about this before the sit down here. There could always be a previous cause, right? But yeah, I would say on the surface, my brother had a bad motorcycle accident. The pain was getting worse. He wasn't going to therapy. Someone turned him on to heroin, and he foolishly took the offer and became a heroin addict, and was very depressed about it, and took his own life with a shotgun. My brother was a real outdoorsman. He liked hunting and fishing, and unfortunately got access to a gun and took his own life.
And then before you knew it, the other 2?
Well, they had become heroin addicts along with my brother. And, people often ask, why would they do that? I just, when people are in pain, they'll do almost anything to escape it, right? So that's the only, if it admits to any kind of logical framework, that's the only way I can think about why they would go to heroin. It's because they wanted to escape really tremendous amounts of pain that they saw no other way.
They also had to live up to your dad's name.
Well, that's when you were asking about why.
Yeah.
So there's so many different things we could talk about as to why my brothers all ended up the way they did. But yeah, it's just certainly bad. I've grown. I think about the Chuvalo thing, right? Like anybody who's got a noteworthy parent has to, or sibling or relative, whatever, has to live up to some kind of preconceived notion of what you are like at some like deep down inherent level. But we're all human beings, man, and sometimes you just to me it was just always it was the roll of the dice
again. Yeah.
That's
It's life.
That's my old man. We got to deal with it. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes it's not so great. Sometimes it's horrible. But you just got to learn to deal with it, right?
Because not only was he fought Ali, but he was known like as one of the toughest guys on the streets, George.
Oh yeah.
So all these guys were
George is like a West Toronto wide boy. Like he was like, there's a saying about.
I read things, Canada's strongest guy, George Chuvalo.
I like anybody when they're young, they're a little cocky, and my father always had that little strut in his walk, But everybody loved George. Like my father was. I don't think he was your typical, and I'm going to use this term, but not in a negative way. He wasn't your typical pug. Boxers are, exposed to all kinds of stereotypes, right? So the one that that you have to be inarticulate or not thoughtful and caring and all those kinds of things that my father was. George broke the stereotype in a lot of ways, right? He was a smart cat, right? So. People loved him for that too.
We're going to get into some of that.
Yeah, okay, cool.
But then you had, I think your brothers were in jail for robberies of pharmacies and things like that.
Oh yeah. Well, you get death. So here's a story about love. My brothers loved my dad. They loved him. Not in a different way, but. It could be argued they loved my dad more than I loved my dad. I love my dad. Don't get me wrong, but there's just an intensity of connection.
Yeah.
That my brothers had that I never had with my dad, right? And when that love is that intense, it's not that good for you. You know what I mean? It's not that good for you, and I think that's when you love that intensely, another person, part of you is lost. And I think that's what happened with my brothers, unfortunately.
And
if that makes sense. That makes sense.
And you received actually calls from the Ali family, and Joe Frazier, for one, called. And
can I tell you
that story?
Yeah. So, I grew up in the era where Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier were two of the biggest sporting names in the world, right? Everybody knew who the champ of the world was, right? And that Frazier was the first one to defeat him in what will always be like the boxing match for me. And I got a chance to meet Joe Frazier a couple times at the International Boxing Hall of Fame, and I'm proud to say I shared a bourbon with him. A loving individual, full of life. Vitality, yeah, I love Joe, and we talked a couple times about Otis Redding and Percy Sledge, who he was very surprised that I had a deep interest in. Anyway, after my mother died, I went back to the house, and the phone rang, and I answered it, and I was the only one there, and I said, hello. He goes, hey, who's this, man? I said, this is Mitch. He goes, hey, man, it's Joe Frazier. He goes, I heard about what happened, and there is nothing I can give you but love, brother. And Joe sang Amazing Grace to me on the phone. And yeah, I'll always remember that as being the kind of guy Joe Frazier was. Like he was just so real, right? He was just a beautiful human being, and in a cruel world sometimes, right? But yeah, I mean, my dad, we used to go to South Carolina.
Oh yeah, Joe came here a lot of times, and because he liked the Chinese food here, and always wanted us to bring him for Chinese food.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, Joe Frazier was like undersized as a heavyweight, but he had an oversized heart, right? So yeah, he was, and when Joe was on top of the world, boxing fans will know the fight between Frazier and Ellis that solidified Joe being the unified champion of all divisions. He had a sizzling left hook. George said my dad's fight with Joe Frazier, my dad's eye blew up and he couldn't see the left hook coming. He said it was no fun getting hit by Joe Frazier when you couldn't see it coming.
Then your dad, George, he took these tragedies on the road,
yeah,
and talked to thousands of kids, schools, prisons, the native reserves, guest speakers downtown, all over at these big conferences and dinners and things like that.
And you accompanied him.
Yeah, I was with him on a lot of them, not all of them, but most of them. And he talked about what drugs and suicide did to his family, told the whole story, showed a little bit of some of his fights to start it off. Some of these kids were so young, didn't even know who he was, but by the end of it, they were up taking pictures, signing autographs with him, and crying when they heard the stories.
My father luckily was a person who could express emotion, right? I think when people hold things inside, it's not good for them. You have to have some way to get it out, in whatever that means for you. Like, just externalize it, get it outside you. And I think when my father went to speak to people, it was that externalization of his own grief, of saying, I'm vulnerable, I'm hurting, and that's how much I love people. I don't want people to experience what I've gone through, because it can all be prevented if you avoid doing drugs. And that's a hell of a message, And for him to open up like that, yeah, I'm proud of him, right? So
there was some kids I went with, they were so young, they sat on the floor, and he sat down with them on the floor and just did whatever they wanted, played, did whatever. This was like little kids. They didn't even know what was going on, but the school had him there, and he just went in and sat with these little kids, and that was something to see. And I said, half of these, the high schools and things like that, after them, the kids crying, talking to them. Even some guys I'd meet at events, and they'd say, I don't really want to say it, but I was in jail back in this day. And, George came in and spoke to us, and, I came out, and look at me now, I'm off the drugs. I'm working, I don't do this, I don't do that. I'm got full time, I got kids, and just wanted to thank George.
Yeah, it's just, George is, he's part of Canadian culture. Always will be. You're talking about the people, the people who come up and give testimony to how he's changed their life. I remember I've seen people with my father's name tattooed on
We saw that at a fight. A girl came up to us.
And I've seen it more than once.
Yeah.
On a person's arm. Or I'll be driving somewhere, and you'll go across a train
or graffiti,
and my dad's name
or his picture,
or I've seen, there are numerous places in Toronto that I could tell you about,
laneways
where my father's picture's on the back of a garage. It's
there's one of him and Ali that's downtown together on a garage.
Yeah,
up in Aurora, there's one right out on the main street. They have like Terry Fox, like all the Canadian legends, and he's on there. There's been a few I've seen around.
That's the stuff. That's the stuff I love about my dad. Like that, any memorabilia? Yeah, no memorabilia, but great memories of just seeing how much of an impact he's had on, Canadian sport in his own distinctive way, right? So,
have you ever thought of taking this over and just going and talking at schools, or continuing with the stories, or no? just drop it and
No. Look. If I was ever to go publicly speak, it wouldn't be about addiction and drugs. It might manifest itself in talking about some form of mental health protocol that would help young people who have addiction. Wouldn't it be a wonderful thing? We're always talking about adversity and how to deal with it, and we have to be resilient. Wouldn't it be a beautiful thing to start a scholarship and present it to a kid who's overcome real hardship with mental health issues with themselves or other people very close to them, or addiction issues they had to live through and overcome, and then have success stories like that and create a scholarship that would be something that has a bit of an educational
which
component.
they did in PEI.
Yes.
When we were down there,
Yes.
they had it, gave a scholarship to
the
a
Boys and
young
Girls
boy.
Club, of Prince Edward Island. Yeah.
And people don't know this. After his boxing career, he was in lots of movies, Prom Night, The Fly.
My dad has been in a series of movies, some of them B level, and then some high. Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about my father, we were talking about how he gets sewn into the culture. If you're a film buff, my dad's, if not my father himself as an actor, but images of my father are in Tom, as you know, lots of movies. The most famous being.
Are you talking Rocky?
Yeah, I got to be
I was
Rocky.
getting the Rocky.
Oh, you're going to get to Rocky. Okay, we'll save the Rocky one. I'll give you the
I
other
got
one.
lots to say. So
Yeah. So there are images of my dad in a Pulp Fiction at the end when Bruce Willis goes back looking for his watch to his apartment, and John Travolta's character is already in there. Yeah, as you pass through that hallway, there's a big picture of my dad, George Chuvalo, Canadian champion, a young picture of him. He's been a comic book character in DC Comics, a character called Stick Chuvalo, who had a gang of wharf rats in New York City in the Bowery. Yeah, I mean, all those kinds of things, Tommy, I absolutely love, right? I love, yeah, so
the Rocky movie,
Yeah.
for people that don't know, you'll see, I think it's Rocky 1.
it is Rocky.
Rocky brings Adrian.
That's the best Rocky.
Rocky.
Yeah.
He brings Adrian, who he's trying to have as his girlfriend. So he brings her on her first date. They go skating. Well, she skates and Rocky doesn't. He's running on the ice with her. It's only them two on the ice. And she says to him, what do you do for a living? And he pulls out a wallet and he says, this is
me fighting somewhere.
this is me fighting so-and-so.
I like this picture. I
like this picture. And he shows the picture. It's actually George Chuvalo fighting the Italian heavyweight champion at Maple Leaf Gardens, Dante Cane.
Yeah.
But so Stallone says that's him in the picture. And many years later, we met Stallone at the Boxing Hall of Fame, and he came up to George and kissed him on the cheek and said, "You're my idol." So that's a part, a lot of people don't know.
Yeah, yes, so everybody, this is another piece of popular culture, Georgie weaved in there. A lot of people ask, the original Rocky character, who was that based on?
Yeah, right? They have a few guys they name.
Yeah, so there's always
Chuck Wepner.
Chuck Wepner gets named. Joe Frazier gets named. My father gets named. But
I think it's pieces from everybody.
Oh, it is pieces from everybody. It's an amalgamation of. And Rocky Graziano, he gets the name from. And Rocky used to talk like this too, with a real, New York accent. And
I think the part
even though he's in Philadelphia, he's still got it kind of like that East Coast Italian
They have that part
accent.
in the Rocky movie where he's in punching the meat packers. I think they took that from because your dad worked the meat packers in Toronto.
So did Joe Frazier, though.
So did Joe Frazier.
You find out, there's something I can use, and I can say, I'm sure Stallone. Interestingly, the picture that Stallone uses, he pulls out and says, "This is me." You can see it on the big screen. It's even bigger on TV. It's kind of small, but that picture, Stallone got the rights from the old Toronto Telegram newspaper for a paltry price of like $500.
That's right.
All right. So my dad had someone inquire about whether or not, having George's name, image, or likeness in the film, he can get a couple dollars out of it. He was told, no, the rights were bought by Stallone, or anticipating something like that. Although Chuck Wepner, I think, ended
up suing him.
Yeah, and got a few bucks out of him too, right?
He sued him for using that. Yeah.
So that's why Stallone loves my dad.
Stallone, then I think he just set out of the court because he didn't want to go through it all. I think he just paid off.
Yeah. So that's why Stallone says, you're my hero, because my dad didn't offer to sue him.
And I know, like, George stayed friends with Frazier. They, like I said, we said it earlier, they were back and forth at these events. George was a guest speaker at Frazier's funeral. He spoke. He was also the same as Muhammad Ali. Muhammad always came here for George's events. George always went every year to his birthdays in Vegas. George was asked to be Muhammad's pallbearer at his funeral. So he kept in contact with all these guys. I attended, like you said too, we attended the Boxing Hall of Fame yearly, the International Boxing Hall of Fame. I went with him to WBC conventions and boxing dinners.
Tommy,
which I got to meet the best.
Tommy. Come on, you got to give me a couple of classic meals you've had with George, because I know in your on the road travels with George, you guys have had some outstanding meals.
We stayed at the best 5-star hotels. They were like, and I'm talking, I got my own room at the top of the Four Seasons in New York, and it was like a penthouse. Had a doorbell.
I want to hear about the food, though.
But no, I'm getting to that, right? And that was like, that was all paid, right? And then, we'd eat at the best steak places, like 2-pound steak one night I ate.
Okay, so the best meal you and I have had together what is that steakhouse in Commerce, California?
California. That's where I eat the 2-pound steak.
Steve's
Steakhouse or Steve's.
That
was a good one.
Oh my goodness!
But yeah, like I said, so I had some of the best meals, right? And didn't have to pay.
Didn't you guys order like dessert, like a rack of lamb for dessert sometime?
George was still hungry, and they said, "What do you want for dessert?" He says, "A rack of lamb." So they had to get him a rack of lamb.
My dad has roots in Herzegovina. I can understand that.
And then, like I said, the best times was going to these places. He met guys like Frank Sinatra, Elvis, James Gandolfini.
Oh, okay, Gandolfini for sure.
Yeah.
So can I tell you this from deep down inside? I don't think my dad ever met Elvis. I only started to hear that story when he started to go into dementia. When my dad started to get like.
But I know he was there for the Elvis concert because there was.
Oh no, he was there
at Maple Leaf Gardens and backstage. And the Beatles.
Okay, hold on. I got a great. You want to hear a great story about that?
Fast.
Okay. All right. So I'll tell you very quickly. My dad's with all his buddies, and they're all going, and their girlfriends. Oh, we're going to go see the Elvis concert, 1956. What do you think of Elvis? The girls. Oh, he's great here. One girl says, he's not so hot. My dad's buddy, Vinnie Billinghurst, her girlfriend. He's not so hot. What do you mean? Elvis is like the bomb. He's not so hot. Anyway, they all go to the concert. Next day, front page of the Toronto Star, girl banging on the door. Elvis, please let me in. It was the same girl.
But like I see, I've been with him, Billy Ray Cyrus wanted photos with him.
Yeah.
Everywhere he went, all these stars we'd see. And a lot of these stars.
Chris Christopherson.
Yeah, they used to all come to the Hall of Fame as guests, and they would all run the George and get photos with him.
Yeah, George.
And even the fans and all that in these places, people, he would get one of the biggest crowds at some of the conventions and Hall of Fames.
George is, you can plug into George in a lot of different ways.
Exactly.
Right? Never knocked down.
Yeah.
Canadian hero. Guy, resilient person who's overcome a lot of personal tragedy, great public speaker, give back to the community. But yeah, he's redeemed a lot of his possible misinterpretations.
I know from here, just going, we go to a hockey game or we go to a baseball game or we go to somewhere, hundreds of people just from the parking lot trying to get into the stadiums, calling him, and he stops for everybody. I'm interested in watching the baseball game, and George, I'm missing half of it while George is still talking to all these people. I go, George, let's go. But he wouldn't. He would just talk to everybody.
when I was a kid, whenever we walk like down Queen Street or Bloor or whatever, Georgie, hey George, the cab drivers, hey, the guys selling newspapers on the corner, the guys in the fruit stand, Georgie, hey George, champ. You know, I love that stuff. I love that. I love that.
Many achievements. Let's name a few. Key to the city, Rob Ford gave him.
Oh well, my dad has a strong connection to the Ford family. Randy Ford was a good friend. Rob's older brother was a good friend or younger brother. Well, I can't remember. Was a good friend of my brother Georgie's, right? So
That's right.
There's a family history. So my dad was always supportive of the Fords.
He got the Order of Canada, which the Queen actually came with Prince Philip to give him personally, which she never really did before for anybody. She came in.
Yeah, and Prince Philip said, "Did you ever fight Henry Cooper?" My
That's
dad
right.
said, my dad
Told him that story. That's
He said he didn't even want to meet me socially. Yeah.
He got the Order of Ontario.
Yep.
He got the Star of Canada Walk of Fame, which is on King Street. If you're walking down there, you'll see it in front of the Roy Thompson Hall.
Yep.
He got the Queen Elizabeth Diamond Jubilee Medal, the Queen Elizabeth Golden Jubilee Medal. He has a statue back home where your parents are from.
Lubishki, Italian.
That's right.
Herzegovina, yeah. Hope to
He
get
got
there
the
one day.
Dr. Murray Award in 1965, Ring Magazine Fight of the Year versus Patterson. He's considered the greatest chin in boxing, ranked number 2 in the world at one time.
Yeah. Twice contested for the world championship.
Canadian amateur champion, Canadian heavyweight champion, Canadian Boxing Hall of Fame
Canadian sports.
inductee, World Boxing Hall of Fame inductee, and then the
National
Boxing Hall of Fame in California,
And then the Canadian Boxing Hall of
Yeah.
Fame, too. And Sports Hall of Fame, too.
and the Sports Hall of Fame.
Sorry about
But then there's many other ones that Etobicoke Hall of Fame he's in, and there's been other few. They have the George Chuvalo Community Center, Neighborhood Center here that's named after him.
Yeah.
PEI, they have a center that's inspired by George Chuvalo.
Boys and Girls Center.
Club. Italy, they have the Andrea Bocelli, who's a phenomenal singer, opera singer, blind boxing fan. He has something inspired by George Chuvalo down there, which in Italy.
I didn't know about that.
Even a deli sandwich here in Toronto from our George's famous. He loved this place. We go. We still go all the time.
This is great. So, we go in there and Panzer's original deli, our friend Lauren Panzer's, right? Yeah. So, he has a fantastic sandwich called the George Chuvalo. How much meat's in it, Tom?
It's a 1 pound sandwich.
I'll go.
And the Toronto Sun, everybody was there that day to have this sandwich.
It's nice to have someone name a sandwich after you, I think.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, it's a hell of an honor. Thanks,
that was
Lauren.
honored by Lauren Panzer, who is the owner of the deli. 70 years that deli's been in business.
Are we going there for lunch next week?
Yeah. But up to like George's late 70s, me and him were in the gym twice a day. And, last week, it was his 88th birthday.
Right.
He's in a home now, Dementia. He fought COVID while he was in this home, beat it.
Yeah, twice.
Prostate cancer, which he beat in this home.
Mr. Chuvalo's going the distance, I think. Tom.
Yeah, that's it. If you ask me every year, people say to me, when do you think, does this look like his George's last year? I go, it looks like his last days. Some days when I go in there, and he's made me look wrong for the last couple of years. But again, he used to kill me in the gym at 80 years old, twice a day.
Yeah, George.
I was really in shape because of him. Even though we went out after to eat. But
my grandfather there's a lot of my grandfather in my father.
Exactly. But that's what we're dealing with right now is George's dementia. But guys like Tyson, Lennox Lewis, Holmes, Frazier, all these guys still, the Ali family calling, they come in.
Jerry Cooney,
they come in privately. We don't say nothing. They come in, we've had, Mike Tyson worships George. Like George is one of George's best boxers, Canadian boxers, George Chuvalo. He bows to George when he sees him.
Well, George is such a resilient, tough man, and all fighters associate their upbringing connecting into that framework, right? I had a tough upbringing. Almost all of them have tough upbringings.
And Tyson lost a child by an accident at 3 years old, died. So he connected with George talking. You know, George at the Hall of Fame one time, they just sat and talked about it. And then he sat next to George at the guest table. That was his thing. He wanted to sit next to George. There's photos of that. You can see, even Google, you'll see them in there. Him and George, you can see him and George talking at the table, and Tyson's like just listening. And we seen Tyson just up to, a couple of years ago, he had a one-man, he does a talk show, and he invited us. We brought George, and he told the crowd, George stood up. He told the crowd, George, he stopped this show he gave us the tickets to come. And he stopped the show just to say George was here. People stood up, clapping, went crazy. After the fight, we went in the back room with him, hung out with him. Yeah, great time. We still hear from him, and again, the Ali family, all those guys.
Tommy, you connected. Part of the reason my dad stayed connected to those people was through your efforts too, man. So I want to personally thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're a connector. You put things together, brother. So I'm very much appreciative of that, and that you helped my dad when he still was cognitively somewhat fluid to be able to enjoy those moments. That's on you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, because I used to get calls from people, and they'd say, you know what, Mike Tyson's coming into Toronto. He wants to see George. He wants to go for dinner. Floyd Mayweather did it. All these guys, they come in, they want to have dinner, they want to see George. So they knew they couldn't get a hold of George anyway, because that's when he was starting to fall to the dementia. So they somehow would get my number through the WBC or whoever. Some boxing committees would give them my number, and they'd contact me to get hold of George. So we'd go.
So if somebody watching this wants your number, Tom, you want to give it out right now?
But I do have one thing. This is just coming to the end. I'm going to give away a surprise package to somebody. All you got to do is, when you see this video, when it comes out on LinkedIn or YouTube, wherever, give me a private message on LinkedIn. I'm going to give you a question here, and you got to answer this. Let me know it privately. Don't say it on the video or nothing, because I won't give it out. You got to privately message me this. If you could tell me what famous park in Toronto George Chuvalo used to jog at when he was in his training days. There's a famous park in Toronto that he used to be known. There's photos of it out there that you can see of him, and he jogged at this park. That's where he did.
So is it first person to get into you on that?
So the first person that
you better check it out,
when that video comes out, you watch the video, and then you'll send me that private message. Again, don't send it on the comments, because everybody will read it. So you have to privately message me. The first person will get this surprise George Chuvalo package.
It wasn't Ichigo Park, was it?
No.
Remember that great song?
Yeah. That's everything, Mitch. Thank you for being
Tommy,
here.
thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you to your production team. Made me feel very comfortable here. I enjoyed the experience. You and I could talk all night. We probably will. We're probably going for something to eat after. We're probably going to talk a little bit after, but we can talk all night. So
that's right.
But thanks for having me.
Thank you.